Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session we are reviewing a post. This post is about post is about coaching, and it's someone who said, "Oh yes, coaching is being done wrong. They're all doing it wrong. It should be done better. It should be done like this." So I'm of course going to have fun with this because obviously this is someone who hasn't done a ton of coaching themselves, at least not in the Overwatch space. It's also not willing to call out who is doing it well, who is doing it wrong. It's like, yes, someone is giving 36 different bullet points. Who was giving 36 different bullet points? Because none of the main coaches that people are being directed to or thinking of that charge for their services, at least around this scene, are really doing that. You can find coaches on Fiverr who are doing a terrible job that charge for it. You could absolutely do that. You can find freebie coaches that are doing a terrible job. Absolutely. But any of sort of the main people that people think of for coaching, especially on this subreddit, since this is where they're posting, really aren't messing that up. And so I find that kind of funny. But let's go ahead and get into it, see what's here. If you guys have thoughts, comments, questions, you can absolutely throw them up in chat. Format-wise, we'll go through the main post, we'll deal with chat, then we'll catch up on the comments down here, and then we'll do another cycle with chat. If our author hops in here, which he might because we made a post linking back to our discussion here, and you guys can definitely hop in there and upvote our post so more people get in this discussion if you would like to do so we can have a more interesting one. But here we go. Hi all. For the longest while, I've been wondering what makes a good coaching session. To prepare for this post, I've tried to search if there have been any other relevant discussions, and I came across this post made by Use Superficial. It's linked there. There's a link to the main post that we're analyzing in the discussion here, or in the description of this video. So you can find your way over to this other one if you want. It's 4 years old. I'm not going to deal with it too much because he pulls out the things that he wants from it. Specifically, they had a statement that I'd like to share. A good coach is qualified by ... being able to properly teach people and to properly prioritize mistakes to fix. The last one is usually the difference between a good coach and a really great one. What does it mean to properly teach? Okay, my situation. Gold player who wants to climb the ladder. Most of the content I view on YouTube for coaching are VOD reviews with the coach giving the players feedback and action points based on what they're observing during the match. One technique I've seen from Pecco coaches, they're gone. That organization is gone. They've closed their doors permanently. Is that they'll ask the player for some context, which I like because it gives some epistemology to the session, i.e., it highlights some previous experience knowledge for the player to give some context to the coaches. Okay, fine. Here's a brief list of some things I like about this VOD review process and some things that I don't. The good, real examples. Can see collective. It's your gameplay, pacing, replay features. Okay. The improvable. Often too long, too much talking, too much information. So he's taking a stab at the standard way how Pecco's doing this. I haven't actually seen too many Pecco reviews. I looked at them as a competitor and went, you guys are charging way too much. I think that just doesn't really make sense. And this was before inflation hit, so that didn't really make sense. They were trying to break into the scene, it looked like, as consultant coaching, and it looked like a big part of their business plan was to go after collegiate coaching, but their price point wasn't something that colleges were going to pay consultants. If they were willing to pay that rate, they were going to hire full-time position coaches. Anyway, doesn't matter. Point here is this is kind of the standard way of doing coaching. Or of doing coaching in the content creation world. It's not necessarily the standard way of doing coaching when you're on retainer for a team, but it is the standard way in the content creation / coach world, which is how most coaches function, because ultimately advertising is part of any business. And all of these coaches are, if they're doing it long term, they're making money in some way, because that's the only way you can really afford to do it long term with high volume. You have some form of compensation in. Maybe that's donations, maybe that's Patreon, maybe that's super chats, maybe that's people paying you directly for coaching, maybe that's Twitch subs, like whatever it is, everyone that's doing this long term has some way that they're getting compensated for it, and it's going to look very similar to what he's describing here. And he said again, the improvable, often too long, too much talking, too much information. And I don't really have issues with this, so I haven't responded too much. Now we're going to get into the improvable section and what he says about it. Before I go any further, I should mention that I've been struggling with the concept of coaching sessions in Overwatch. I've seen and gotten coached enough to know that the general pedagogy, how things are taught, pedagogy, yeah, I'm struggling with that word, my bad, of how Overwatch coaching for people in my shoes isn't effective to my learning and improvement. Oh, to your learning and improvement, because you are a special butterfly who learns differently than everyone else. Or learning is hard work. There's ways to make it easier, there's ways to structure stuff to make it easier, but this like, oh, there's different learning styles and I learn like this and I learn like this is a lot of that is not true. The lies we've told ourselves. Anyway, okay. Okay, of Overwatch coaching for people in my shoes isn't effective to my learning and improvement. Recently, I've asked my coaches for schemas, which is a fancy way of saying categories of gameplay to focus on my practice. Example, positioning, mechanics, ult tracking, etc. These are fantastic, however, I'm being given 4 to 6 points per category. Okay, I doubt it. Like if you asked coaches to go, hey, well, I'll finish reading this. If you're given 6 schemas, that's going to be 24 to 36 action points to work on. That's too much information to strategically implement without guided practice. Okay, I don't disagree, but I don't think this is happening. And what I mean by that is if we look at this, you've asked your coaches specifically for schemas. Did you ask them for schemas with a, hey, I want to know how the game works, I want to know the everything of the world, and go, I want to know the everything of the world. Teach me, like, break Overwatch into a couple different categories for me, things to work on. And they're going, okay, well, if I have to do it, I do mechanics, I do positioning, I do game sense. I might go a little further and go, do I want to create a different category for ult tracking? I'd probably put that in game sense. Do I want to create another category of reads, something like that? Do I want to create another category around communication? Okay, do I want to create a category around scouting, or am I going to put that under game sense? Do I want mechanics to be all aim, or do I want to break this into its own category of aim plus movement plus tech type stuff? Like, okay, well, are we going to put Hammond, being able to bounce off walls for things, Doomfist rollouts, Mercy techs, etc., in their own category, or are we just going to include them in movement? Like, I could break the game out into 6 categories, 8 categories, 4 categories, however many I wanted, and then put sub bullets under them for that. And if you want, well, what is sort of the world of Overwatch? That's something I could do for you. I don't think it's necessarily helpful, and I probably wouldn't spend my time doing it, but it's something I could do. And it looks like a coach that you're a student of, or multiple coaches that you're a student of, it sounds like you asked them for this and they did it. And now you're surprised that when they created 6 categories for you, or whatever the case may be, that there were still 4 to 6 points in each category. Oh my goodness, Overwatch is complicated. I really doubt that they told you to work on all of the points in each category at the same time. I find that incredibly unlikely. I think it is way, way more likely that you specifically asked them for, or they thought you were looking for hey, I want to know sort of the everything so I can understand this so that I can figure out what is the road in front of me, how much do I have to do. So you set them up to fail. Maybe you didn't. Maybe these are just coaches that just went, these are the 36 things you need to work on, go. But I find that unlikely, truth be told. We all do, Starsville. We all do. And I call that out. I didn't tag you. I would have tagged you specifically. You just weren't at the top of my mind at the time. That's an oversight. I apologize. But I called out that, as you're saying in chat here, yes, all of the coaches that people are thinking about on this subreddit who aren't just doing this for free, who have a decent amount of bulk that they put out there, are doing 2 to 3 topics. They're not doing 36, 6, 40, 26, anything in that category. If you asked them to, they could create and this is all of Overwatch and all the things you might need to work on, and it might be that many things because you asked them to do schemas. You asked them to break the game up like that. But that's on this person, not on their coaches, unless their coaches literally went, okay, now work on all of these things. So I find this is kind of garbage, but that's okay. If you're given 6 schemas, that's going to be 24 to 36 action points to work on. That's too much information to strategically implement without guided practice. Right. So I want to see the words, and I'm not going to. They told me to work on all 36 things at once. I think it's very unlikely they did that. I think it's much, much more likely, especially if you're using any of the main premier primetime coaches, that they went, here's 2 to 3 things. Sometimes maybe they'll cheat a fourth in there, or maybe they gave you more than 2 to 3 things if you played like 3 different heroes and you had an hour or a 2 hour session with them or something like that. As artifacts of improvement to build a learning portfolio, these are great, which is basically what you asked them for. However, it's a big ask for someone to walk away with 9+ chunks, pieces of detailed information to remember and act on. No one expects you to do that. Like, again, you can find maybe a Fiverr coach that expects you to do that, but guess what? They're not doing very much business. Should also mention that I've been a language and dance instructor for about 10 years now. Okay. Having taught in some parts of Southeast Asia, Europe, and North America, I'm currently completing my master's in education with an emphasis in online learning and teaching. Okay, now that just makes you less credible. I'm sorry, but it does. So I know people who have gotten their masters in education. I know what the job market is like for that, and it's garbage. So I'm sorry. It was smart of you to go teach in places like Southeast Asia and elsewhere because hey, at least you were able to get a little bit of money. So congratulations, good move there. It's still going to be really hard to pivot into a real meaningful job. But here's what you run into with this. Like, I know how masters in educations work, and they teach you, oh, these are the learning strategies. You need to make it short. You need to make it digestible. You need to do all these things. You need to do all this. And then they don't actually teach you in this way. So, like, the people who are teaching the people to get their masters in education are like, yes, these are the ways that you should teach people. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to teach you in a completely different way with cram and all this and all these things, and they're not there. So excuse me for not having a very high opinion of like, these are the right teaching strategies that you should be using. But no, you guys need to go learn like this with our terrible teaching strategies. Are we going to practice what we preach here or not? And then, oh yeah, and you're gonna go do that, and we have these great sessions, and they'd work, except the mandates, the requirements from the states, the federal government, all that mess us up, and we have to teach to the test, and that's why we can't get better outcomes in education. Okay, maybe it is, but like, again, we're not working within those structures. We're not actually doing a very good job in education as a country. Again, most schools have a couple good teachers or a couple good professors. Major might have 1 to 2 good professors. School might have like, I don't know, 6 good teachers there if you're talking like a high school or something like that. This is not telling me that like, I've studied it, so I'm good at this. I'm going to need more than this to believe that you're good at it. Okay. Or that you understand it. Okay. Okay. Some theories are directly applicable to Overwatch, in my opinion, are the concepts of cognitive overload and prior knowledge. Am I going to regret opening these? 9-minute read. No, we're not going to go through this. Okay. They might make this better, but we're not going to go through these. Naturally, I have some strong opinions of how I would like my coaching sessions to go. I would like to see more advanced organization. If paid for an hour, I'd expect 20 to 30 minutes of asynchronous preparation from the coach and the other 3 to 40 minutes of the synchronous VOD review. What's good for me might not be good for all, but I'm fortunate enough that I can communicate these needs. Okay, you have to deal with the realities of the market. I know you are looking to work in the education sector, so you aren't used to dealing with the private sector, the realities of the market. You should have some idea of it because you've probably figured out how hard it is to get jobs and you have to apply to them and you have to give people what they want and what they expect. And even if what you're giving them is better than what they expect, even if you're way more qualified and way better than all the other candidates, you know how when you're applying to jobs, you don't really get a chance to explain that until they bring you in for an interview. You can't really get across like, oh no, it's different, or maybe my resume is light on this, or maybe I don't have this thing that you're looking for, but what I've done really over here is really equivalent or better than this other thing. You know how like you can't really get that through? Well, the reality is the same. What that is that's marketing or advertising. You can't really get it through until you already have them there. That's the same thing for all of us in the coaching world that are running our own businesses here, where we're going, hey, oh, we have a super chat coming in from Adam in charge for 199 saying, no, you're coaching wrong, not me, Lamau, bye. Thank you, Adam. Thank you. I very much appreciate that 199 super chat. Returning to the point here, the same reason that you might struggle to go get a job because I actually am more than qualified for this, but I can't get through because there's 500 applicants. It's the same thing in the private sector. It's the same thing here when we're going, hey, we are running our own businesses doing coaching here, and what does the market expect? Yes, it might be better. You might have done this work in Southeast Asia that's fantastic and more than equivalent and is actually better than having worked locally because had to do, it was more difficult and they didn't speak English, so you had to be better about your teaching and it should be worth more points, but it doesn't fulfill the requirements on the job you're saying of, oh, we need 4 to 6 years of domestic teaching. Oh, well, shoot, how are you going to do that? Or we want teaching in our state when you taught in a state that had higher requirements and you think that should be transferable. Doesn't matter. Until you can get into the interview, you're just dead. It's the same thing in this coaching world where we have to go, hey, what do people expect? Well, the world of coaching, if you don't have a coach on retainer, is if you go try to get a tennis lesson, you go to a tennis pro, you go to a golf pro, you go get a tutor, maybe for chess, maybe for your math homework, maybe to help get you into college, maybe you go get, whatever it's going to be. Maybe you go get a coach to work privately with you on baseball so you can make the select team, whatever the case may be. If you pay for an hour, you expect that they're going to work with you for an hour. If you pay for 2 hours, you expect that they're going to work with you for 2 hours. That's the expectation. And when you're shopping around and looking for which private baseball coach you're going to get, you're considering which one has the best reputation, which one actually advertises enough that you see that they exist in the first place, and what are their rates. And if one is telling you, hey, I'm going to coach you for 30 minutes, and I'm going to charge you $200 per 30 minutes, and the other goes, okay, cool, you're going to actually coach me for 30 minutes, and the other is saying, I'm going to coach you for 60 minutes, and I'm going to charge you $200, making up the numbers, it doesn't matter. Okay, unless this one has a vastly, vastly better reputation, vastly, vastly better marketing, you're going to pick this one. You are strongly incentivized to pick this one. And you might go, no, Temporal, what I'm saying is they're both doing 60 minutes, but this one is doing 30 minutes of hidden prep work, whereas this one is doing 60 minutes. The market won't bear it. The market won't care. You could perhaps, after you've taught someone once or twice, said, hey, now we're going to move to a system. Now that I've got you in here, now that you've done my introductory style thing and I've got you in my system and you know how good of a coach I am and how much better you're getting at baseball, now we're going to do it this way because this is actually going to be better for you. But they're probably going to feel stiffed. You're going to create a bit of a pain point and you're going to create a place that they potentially break away. So it doesn't make sense to do this system unless you get vastly better results out of it that are going to outdo the value of the advertising value of, hey, our price point buys you more time. That sort of thing. It doesn't make sense. You have to remember, we're interacting with the world. We're spending resources, time, money, whatever, to advertise, to get people engaged, to get people to come purchase things from us. And it doesn't make sense in that limited advertisement, that limited engagement window, because as you've pointed out yourself, people's attention spans are short, to go, oh, with this short thing, let me explain to you why my charging you $200 for half the time or for half the time of me prepping and you don't actually really know if I'm doing it or not, or if I skimped on it and only did 10 minutes of prep versus the other guy who's doing 60 minutes with you is better. No, I'm not going to use my limited catching of your attention, my limited advertising resources on that. I'm going to go, this is what the market wants, this is what the market will purchase, and go do that. Now again, if this gets me 10 times better results, I might do it anyways. But guess what? It doesn't. If you would like this type of coaching, you can do what it sounds like you do as the writer here, what the writer does of this, and go, oh, I'm going to tell my coaches that this is specifically what I want, and they may adjust and go, yeah, okay, that's fine, I can do it that way. If you really want this style of coaching, though, what you do is you get a coach on retainer, and that's what real teams do. If I'm coaching in Contenders, I'm effectively on retainer, even though I'm not getting paid very much. If I'm coaching For Owl, I have a salary. I'm effectively on retainer. And yes, I will do this asynchronous prep where I'm absolutely going to myself go, I will spend an hour prepping a VOD review that is only going to take 45 minutes. So I'm going to have spent an hour and 45 minutes on a VOD review so that my team only spends 45 minutes because there's 6 other people, 7 other people, 8 other people that see that VOD review and they only had to spend 45 minutes. Whereas if I didn't do this hour prep, our VOD review might have taken an hour and 20 minutes. And guess what? People's attention spans are valuable. They absolutely are valuable. And if there's 6, 7, 8, whatever people that are going to be viewing this, it absolutely makes sense to go, I will spend extra time to save these people time, but also to, in a higher impact way, hit their limited attention spans. But if I'm working with one player's time is not more valuable than mine, so I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to go, okay, we're going to go through this slower together. Now, if you're not a bad coach, if you're a less experienced coach, if you're less experienced with the hero, if you're coaching above levels that you're comfortable with, you're still going to have to do this prep work because you just can't deliver the product without having done the prep work. But as you get better, that stops being true when you can go through it with someone. And yes, it takes you the hour 20 instead of 45 minutes, but that most of the time makes sense in a retainer type situation because you're all working together to try to get better at something. Obviously, if there's hugely different amounts of money, like someone is going, I'm paying stupid amounts of money to you to make me better as fast as you possibly can. This would be you're working with very wealthy clients and their time is extremely valuable and they're willing to compensate you, or they're paying you in such a way where you don't get very much time with them, but they want to get good at something, be it Overwatch, be it tennis, be it baseball, be it, creative writing, whatever the case may be. Yes, you will do a lot of this work so that you can constantly be delivering the highest impact stuff you can with the very limited amount of their time, but they understand that's what they're purchasing. That is not the situation that 99.9999999% of Overwatch people are in. But yes, if the 1% is like, I want to be the absolute best at Overwatch, or really the 1/10 of 1% says that, and they have the financial support to do so, yes, that is how you would coach for them. Okay. Okay. Let's continue through here, because this is me responding to them saying if they purchase an hour, they want 20 to 30 minutes of asynchronous prep and then the 30 to 40 minutes of actual VOD review. But again, the market won't actually support that because that's not what it expects. It doesn't make sense to spend your time, your resources, your marketing telling them why you're doing that when you have limited grasp on their attention. You don't want more friction making the transaction more difficult in the first place when it's your own business that you're trying to run here. Okay. Continuing. However, I have many questions, and I'd love it if I got some of your thoughts on all or any of these questions. For the players, what do you value in coaching? Has coaching been largely successful for you? A lot of us have testimonial things. Again, the bigger, more experienced, more known coaches mostly have Discords, and a lot of us will have. If you talk to us and say, hey, let me talk to someone who you coach, we can absolutely point you in the direction of people who've done well. We can absolutely answer questions of, well, what's the most improvement any one of your students has had? We can absolutely ask, okay, well, have you helped anyone this low before? Have you helped anyone this high before? And some of us will have little testimonial sections in our Discord. So like this, you can ask other players that's fine, but most of us can tell you, yeah, most of us that have been successful can tell you we've been successful. Funny how that works. In terms of, but you could be lying to us or you're not showing us the bad ones. Yeah, you could be worried about that, but what you're going to run into and what you'll find is coaching is a two-way street. We can help people get better. We can help put you in the fast lane to get better, but ultimately you do have to put in the work to get better. You have to actively want to get better, not just to play for fun. It has to not be I've checked the box, I'm getting coaching, so now I should just be better. You do have to actually put in the work. And that's why, yes, every coach, even the very best coaches, are also going to have some people that they've worked with that maybe have purchased sessions from them who have not improved very much. And that's going to happen. Because again, it is coaching makes you better. Coaching moves some obstacles out of the way, gets you there faster if it's being done well, but it is ultimately a thing where the person has to want it. And they have to want it with their actions, not just say that they want it. On average, how many action points, things to work on, improve, have you been giving in a coaching section? Okay, it's going to be 3. I can tell you that it's going to be 3 for most of the people here, because most of the people here are interacting with mostly the big names that I've listed. I actually linked some of the bigger names in this subreddit's coaching. And we know that all these ones give 3. Now, there's more coaches out there. There's also freebie coaches that hop on the subreddit, or coaches that are just starting that hop on the subreddit that I didn't bother to list because they just don't have enough of an audience yet. But them not having enough of an audience yet also means they're doing less reviews, or less people are seeing their work, and therefore the answer is going to potentially be different. Again, if you have an issue writer with like, oh, I'm getting given too many action points, or I had bad coaching, you can call them out. You can leave a bad review on the subreddit. I doubt our Overwatch University is going to take down a bad coaching review. They might, but I doubt they're going to. You might be surprised, though, if when you come in here and say, I don't like the coaching because it's too long, it takes too much time, there's too much information, it's not an 8-minute soundbite that's perfect for my attention span, it's not a 1-minute TikTok that's perfect for my attention span. You might be surprised when some people like myself and like some commenters in here come explain to you why that can't really be done. You might be surprised that, 1-minute TikTok videos are not, in fact, the best way to educate people on complicated concepts. Okay. Okay. What's roughly the ratio of things you are taught in coaching session to what you end up practicing before the next coaching session? Example, if you were given 15 things to work on, how many of them do you consciously work on? Who's actually giving you 15 things to work on? I might mention more than 15 different things that you did wrong over the course of a match I'm reviewing, as will some of the other coaches. Other coaches are more likely to let it go by than me, and that's fine. But the things that you get hit on for repetition that are repeatedly going to be brought up, like, okay, you can see after 5 minutes, 6 minutes into the VOD that Zarya self-bubbles are going to be an issue, or you can see that reloads are going to be an issue, or you can see that using their ears for directional feedback are going to be an issue, and you start repeatedly hitting that as it continues until you can tell that, okay, this person's got it, I don't need to repeat it anymore. I'm just going to cover it at the end because the repetition is stuck. Or if you don't have that, you might keep repeating it. There is a little bit of a medium difference between do you have the person there with you in voice where you can judge their where you can get feedback from them or not. But repetition is important, and repetition does make things longer. Okay. That said, because we're not doing asynchronous prep, because the market won't bear it, we can't go, I'm not going to talk about anything that wasn't the 3 things that you were going to work on, because we don't know the 3 things that are most important for you to work on until we've seen a little bit of tape. Again, though, this 15 thing is not happening with the main coaches that people would be thinking about. Was going to do cooking videos? Maybe. You'd be interested in that just to see him in a different room? That's a little bit of more of a pain for me to set up. Like, I can't stream that the same way unless I do it with a cell phone. And anyway, okay, we'll get back to this. Have you ever been asked or told what you're good at before a session starts? Have you ever been asked or told what you're good at before a session starts? Well, I can't tell you what you're good at before a session starts unless I've pre-studied your gameplay, which, again, unless we're in a retainer type situation, isn't going to happen. Unless you specifically tell me that that's what you want, and then it's eating into your time. And I can tell you that the vast majority of people aren't going to want that. Have I asked people what they're good at before a session starts? I mean, yeah, I have sometimes asked people. I'm not a player here, I'm the coach, so this is the wrong thing for me to be answering. But I have sometimes asked people what they're good at, or which heroes they think they're better at, or things like that. And sometimes it's interesting because you then surprise them, but it's sort of just like, it's not really helpful because I understand the game a lot better than most of the people I'm coaching. So asking them what they think they're good at, I'm about to see it and like, okay, well, maybe that's not the best thing in the world. And now you're going to get defensive. People are going to get more defensive about being told, hey, you're really bad at taking angles on Soldier. Like, they're going to get more defensive about that if they had first put up and said, oh, hey, I'm pretty darn good at Soldier. Soldier's my best hero. Like, you actually don't really want that because it raises their defenses. Whereas if they haven't put something out there, they now don't have a social or ego duty to defend it the same way. So I'm actually not a huge fan of that. Coaches, do you prepare for a session? If yes, how much preparation do you do? I've already answered that. For individual sessions, the answer is generally no. Earlier in my coaching career, you'd see a little bit of individual prep. You'd see some individual prep for heroes at the top level that I was uncomfortable with. You're really not going to see that anymore. You will, however, see me doing that for team VOD review sessions with a team that I'm actively working for, not a team that I'm consulting for and maybe help out once every couple weeks. How long are your sessions? It depends. Again, team VOD reviews, I'd like to keep to 45 minutes. If they end up going an hour, I can live with that. An hour 15, I can live with that. Individual sessions, I would like generally to be an hour because that's something that works. People can actually pay attention to their gameplay longer than they can pay attention to team gameplay, so you can afford to go a bit longer with those. That said, most of the time, if I was doing it, again, in a retainer type situation, I can actually keep those sessions to 20, 30 minutes if I'm doing them more often. I don't need to go both directions through a map, for example, because I can find, and we can together correctly realize this is something that you should work on. That said, again, this is an expectations thing where sometimes it takes some time to break people on that, and they're like, no, I want to see the whole map, that sort of thing. And it's like, that's okay, but do you want to be like, no, I'm not going to review the rest of the map with you? Generally, no, because the relations matter. If you're doing it often enough, as you continue, there should be less request for that because it's a, hey, we have a couple things for you to work on, and that's really what was important, a couple of the most important things for you to work on, and you can do shorter sessions. For those of you that have mostly watched my videos, you're going to be surprised that, when I'm working with Northeastern, for example, when I'm working with contenders teams, that yes, I will frequently in one-on-ones go, okay, we're done in 20 minutes, we're done in 30 minutes, that sort of thing, but that's because there's no need to finish the map. As a service, however, people are more likely to feel cheated if like, wait, we didn't even finish the map, that sort of thing. Maybe at some point I'll tone that down, bring that back in, but that would be my concern there. That said, other coaches have gone away with stricter, nope, we've hit the time limit, I'm done type things. Again, though, it's not really about a time limit. It's not really about map completion. It's really about at what point have we seen enough that the coach knows the most important things for you to work on, and that we've been able to do enough repetition to get you to see why that's the most important thing for you to work on. And again, with better players, it's generally going to take less repetition because most better players are better players in part because they are able to do self-improvement more consistently, and they're able to recognize those things and make those changes faster. Absolutely true that it's easier to pay attention with your own gameplay. Yep. Okay. Is there a structure of your sessions? If so, how does it generally go? I don't really feel need to answer this. Anyone watching this mostly is going to have a pretty good idea of what my structure looks like for the public stuff anyways, which is, hey, I'm going to, well, generally, if it's maybe you guys don't know because I don't stream the first part or I don't record the first part when they're off-air sessions. If I have someone in voice with me, I'm generally going to ask them ahead of time, hey, do you have any general questions, general things that are bothering you, maybe stuff you ran into that we're going to see on this map that we're going to review, maybe something that didn't come up on this map but you consistently run into or just don't know how to solve, things like that. And I'll generally spend about 10 minutes going over more general questions not related to the map, that sort of thing, and then we'll start and sort of go through the review. So I'll get some background knowledge about them in those sections. That's not going to happen in my stream reviews because often my stream reviews are the shorter half-hour reviews, and the time budget isn't there for that for what's being paid for. Do you get paid for your services? Yes, and everyone should. If you get what you pay for. If you want people to do work for you, they're going to have to be compensated. Now, they might be getting compensated through you watching advertisements. They might be getting compensated through you doing marketing for them. It might be a trade. Like I had someone teach me how to better use Photoshop in exchange for a session, and that was a perfectly fine trade. Like, hey, this made my thumbnails get a bit better. Cool, works for me. Fair trade. But like people should get compensated for doing work that they're good at. Don't do things that you're good at for free. Do you offer repeat service? Absolutely. You keep paying me money, I keep doing work. Do you get repeat service? Yeah, oh, most certainly. I love that Overwatch has given me a direct channel to apply the theory I've been learning. I'm really interested to start any dialogue with any of you that wish to talk about it. I hope you hop in here. I hope you hop in here. I certainly did my comment as a top level comment, so this person will have that as a fresh comment. It's not buried where they won't get the ping in here in their alarm, so maybe they'll hop in. If they already have, throw something in there in chat. I haven't seen it yet, but my general responses here is at least this person is admitting that they're learning the theory of, and they haven't had a ton of chance to apply it before. I'm probably a little older than you. I have had a little more time to apply some of this theory, even if I didn't go get a master's in education to go get it. And I can tell you, there's reasons we do things the way we do. Are there places where we could improve? Absolutely. There could be one of the better coaches is going to find that recipe to be between your Overwatch, which, hey, your Overwatch is very digestible. There's a reason they have 1 million subscribers or almost that or whatever. It's very digestible content. The problem is it's not actually very good educational content, and we all know that. Versus watching something like what I put out, it's going to be, that's an hour-long VOD review. That's a long time. There's a lot of repetition, and he covers points that he's covered in other VOD reviews, and I feel like I've seen that, and well, I don't know that I want to do that. Okay, yeah, that's a bigger investment, absolutely, totally understand it, but it's much higher quality content. And I'm using my own here, but we could use someone else. I didn't use my own to be like, oh, I'm so much better than your Overwatch. I am. I used my own because I'm on the longer end of the better coaches, and I was trying to highlight that difference there. So like if someone goes, hey, I can't do this, I'm never going to have as much mainstream appeal as your Overwatch does because your Overwatch is like eating candy. It's not actually making you better. Whereas eat this is more like, okay, you're eating vegetables. Okay, well, can we figure out how to do this in some way that's like, can we make our vegetables taste better? Can we put, something to make this a little bit more interesting and have it have more mass appeal? Like, okay, if we just do vegetables, if we just try to make everyone eat celery, not many people are going to do it, but is it healthy enough if we, put peanut butter on the celery? That sort of thing. You go this, where it's not as good as just eating your vegetables. There's definitely some worse there, okay, that sort of thing, but it gets more total vegetables eaten, and maybe that trade makes sense, and okay, this is healthy enough, and it's certainly better than just eating candy to get your calories for the day. So there's probably room here for someone to take off, not in the current ecosystem. There's just not enough eyeballs on Overwatch right now, but in Overwatch 2, someone could absolutely take over by trying to capitalize on this, finding a place between the two. Yeah. So that would be the like positive take on what's being put here, but it's still not going to be, oh, learning is absolutely fun all the time and everything. Like it can be, but it's like the difference between, I think I put in my post, okay, why isn't reading my history textbook for hours as engaging to me as playing Candy Crush for hours? Well, I mean, that's not fair. One of those is going to be mentally more exhausting than the other. That sort of thing. Okay. So yeah, I'm not really impressed with this post. This post, obviously, the author is welcome to come on and defend here. I get what they're trying to do. It's interesting and it's good that they're trying to apply the theory of something that they're learning to something else in their life and go, hey, how could this be better? I'm learning about education, so I must be going, how do I implement this stuff? Well, okay, good. I'm glad that you learned the theory. Now have your theory meet the real world and see why the real world has adjusted. Because again, it's just like your instructors as you're getting your masters there who are going like, this is in theory the best way to teach kids, but this is not how we're teaching you. Well, why not? Well, because reality, and you're going to pretty soon be met with this reality here. But yeah, it was interesting. If you're really getting this, 36 different things to work on, call out the coach. Like, if you think your coaching is bad, call out the bad coaching. Call it out on Reddit. Maybe the mods will tell me, no, that's wrong. Please don't have people call it bad coaching. But I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it. I think the mods will let that one go. If it turns into too much drama, they'll of course lock the thread, but I don't think they're going to smack your hand too hard or anything for having done that. Um, and if you call them out and they come defend themselves, we'll come see the story, and it may turn out to be very similar to what Joex is going to put here, which we'll get to. But first, let's catch up on comments from people. Okay, catching up on comments. Starfield, not gonna lie, was refreshing your feed to see when you would comment on this post. We definitely got here, Starsfilth. You always give like 2 to 3 things. Yep, and you would have, as I said, been in my post of the sort of main coaches who, are most probably thought of on this subreddit. There's other coaches in this field that I didn't list here, but on this subreddit, these and maybe Starsfilth are the ones you probably most get thought of. Remember, guys, if this gets up votes, we get more visibility, we get more people in chat. We perhaps get the author here to talk with us, which can be more interesting. Maybe they'll even hop on for a voice call. That could be fun. We've done that before. 5 upvotes. Cool. Blah says, you always point to your Overwatch video. They know everything. Starsfilth agreeing. I love my trolls. You guys are great. The Orisa guides are fire. For those that don't know, we do reviewing of other people's content, not just people's Reddit threads, but other people's videos as well. And we did review Your Overwatch's Orisa guide. So if you want to do a search for Orisa guide or Your Overwatch on the channel, you can see that. We definitely had some thoughts. And if you have other content creators out there and you're not sure, like, wait, is this content any good? Is this right? Is this wrong? What are Tim World's opinions? You can join my Discord in the description below and potentially post those things there, and maybe I'll review them. Oh boy, articles. There were too many words for temporal to read. It's more of an I have an audience to deal with thing, and like I don't want to go three articles deep to cover the first article. But thank you, blah. I like reading words. Audience to maintain, though. Starsfilth says everyone has different expectations for a coach. I think coaches should be treated like therapists, where it's good to try different ones until you find the one that's best for you. I think there's some truth there. Absolutely. Get a chess coach and one easy lesson, and you can beat XQC. Exactly. Hey, Kessel. Okay. He made it to like 1200, so he'd learn not to eat the pieces. Okay. Hey, Scottfree. Starsfield says, my selling point is saying dated Twitter memes during sessions. I mean, your thumbnails are also killer. By killer, I mean painful, but like, it's the is this ironic bad or ironic good level of painful. They're pretty great. They're pretty great. Mini retainer service on Patreon when? Maybe. Putting someone on retainer is expensive. It is. Like, things that are when you think of things that are on retainer, it's like, oh, a company has lawyers on retainer. Oh, people who are on boards are effectively on retainer. People who are on boards are not doing very much work, but getting paid a fair amount of money. And I'm not saying that that's the level that you have to compensate Overwatch coaches at to be on retainer, but like, there's being on retainer is, kind of an all hours. It's not cheap. I'll put it that way. It's not expensive to like being on boards level or being a corporate attorney on retainer, but like it's not like it's $5 and you have this person on retainer and they'll show up and cover your match and they'll go do this VOD review for you and they'll go do a bunch of prep work for you. Like, for most people, it's going to make more sense to do a money for time situation. You've got to need a lot of service for the retainer to make sense, and for retainer to make sense, they have to be fairly secure in it as well. Anyway, we'll move on. It's important to be relatable. What if you're a terrible coach teaching a terrible player? Can two wrongs make a right? Okay. What if he's accidentally right? That happens sometimes to people. A long time ago, you thought your Overwatch videos was good. Right, because it was like, hey, there's this player, they seem authoritative, they seem like they know what they're talking about it, they're saying it decisively, and they have a lot of subscribers, so they must be right. It's, like it's an easy bandwagon argument from authority type fallacy to make, especially when you don't have a ton of good information to compare it to, when there weren't great Overwatch content out there to be checking it against, and you also wouldn't have found them. This gets back to our marketing and advertising type thing. And the candy, guess what? It's easier to sell candy than it is to sell broccoli. No surprise there. All the popular channels refuse to talk about Mercy. uh, Lom is a coach. Is it April 1st already? I mean, I didn't have an issue putting him here because if you look at what I put here, these people are all doing 2 to 3 points per video. And the llama does, regardless of what you think of his quality, he does do 2 to 3 points per video. He, specifically goes, oh, they're sticky notes, and that's fine. 15, lol. Is that 15 item list ranked? Temporal is going to do cooking videos. I would be interested in that just to see him in a different room. Meals to cook for Overwatch Advantage. Not everything is about Overwatch Advantage, Val. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. I think the SR gains expected per item should be logged so you know how to balance the fun aspect versus improvement. That's a little tough because improvement for people tends to be like every individual is different, and as most people know, you can be getting a little better, getting a little better, getting a little better, not really seeing it, but then you've done these things, and then the next thing really shoots you up. And then instead of stalling out for a long time here, you're able to pretty quickly move up again because you'd made improvements that actually pushed future obstacles out of your way. Because we do that. We do things where we go, this isn't the most helpful thing for you at this second, but I really don't want this habit to get worse. It's going to be harder to fix later. So that would be a tough thing to do. Tofu, you hate it, but it's true. Okay. I've read your mind and we figured out what you're good at before we begin. Right? Right? Okay. Uh... When's the next Val review? I don't know. Ask Val. When the footage for temporal won't be a complete disappointment. Okay, moving on a little bit here. Val says, at Temporal, I call it Temporal. What he calls Bunny Hop and Mercy Tech is actually a slingshot. What is actually Bunny Hop refers to hopping after GA to conserve the momentum. It's a second jump. I'm not sure I care, but okay. Sometimes I lose terminology battles, sometimes I win them. Protect the McCree was a comp that existed around the same time as Goats. When Goats was battling for existence with Dive, people were desperately trying to keep Dive relevant for beating Goats because people didn't want to play Goats, and I coined the name for the Protect the McCree comp. Um, and sometimes other people got subbed in there, but like I won that battle, but I lost other battles. I did not win the counter dive battle, for example. Counter dive, I hate that we call it counter dive when you peel dive, when you dive your own backline to peel off the divers. I think that's a foolish thing to call it because counter dive, it's not clear. Do you mean dive your own backline or do you mean they dove your backline? Quick, dive their backline. Like sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I will generally go, okay, I'm going to use the terminology that the scene is using so that it doesn't create more friction, so that I don't have to like reteach people stuff just for the sake of, I've renamed it and that makes it better. Like, that's just not worth the battle. But whatever. If that's really what they're going with, then what I generally am referring to there is slingshot, fine. You tagged me in this thread. Thanks, Dabsy. The names of Mercy Tech changed over time. Temporal hasn't been keeping up. I'll live. Did you review Angry Llama? I don't know much about him because people say so many different things. I didn't review him, but Spilo did review him, and I'm generally not going to review things that Spilo has already reviewed, and I suspect vice versa, because Spilo's a pretty good source, guys. Like, I'll tell you, even though we haven't reviewed Spilo's content on here, Spilo is a pretty good source. Spilo and I have worked together a lot of times. If I wasn't offering coaching content and people were just like, hey, I know you're not in the Overwatch scene anymore, but who can you recommend? Most of the time it would be Spilo, so it doesn't really make sense to go do those things. If you want to see the Angry Llama review, Spilo did one. Came from Alex's stream where he commented on Stylosa coaching. Okay. Did he? Interesting. Kessel says, don't know if Temporal has reviewed him, but my 2 cents are I respect him and his work, and he's helped people, but I disagree with a lot of his attitudes and takes. Okay. How much to get Temporal on a retainer? Good question. depends what expected level of work is. What do you have? Do you have a team that you need me to coach for? Do you have an organization with multiple teams that you want me to coach for? Are you expecting that, 11 months of the year you're not going to have much, but then you're going to organize a tournament and you want me on retainer to advise you for how to organize your tournament? Do you want me doing this in a more board of directors style where I'm teaching you how to build an organization, or I'm being the elder teaching someone how to make a tier 2 organization, maybe in Overwatch, like Third Impact did, and then pivot over to other more profitable scenes? Like, what do you want out of me? We'd negotiate that then. Oh, cool. Toby's here. Well, cool. I'm jumping into the stream now. This is my post. We'll have to check out the stream later. Sounds good. Or if you want to hop on and discuss, it may be a little too late because you sort of missed our actual discussion of it. But if you want to, I can hop on, bring you on in Discord, and we can have a conversation about it. I'm happy to do that. She's just catching up on chat. Quick, ask him your questions. You have so many, I have to digest the response. I get it. If you want to come on voice chat, that's probably a little more interesting for a repeat. So you can ping me. You can join my Discord in the description below. And from there, you can directly message me, and I'll bring you on for voice chat if you like, and we can discuss this one. I don't have a ton of time because I have work to do in half an hour here, but I could do that probably for like 20 minutes if you reached out to me now. And obviously, I would restate my thoughts for you, but I'm not going to restate them again unless I have you in voice chat, because if I restate my thoughts, that'll be a more interesting way to do it for the audience here. Also, you have your 10-day old in your arms. That's fair. Okay. Well, the big question is here. Is there a need for coach training? Okay, so if your big question is there a need for coach training? My response would be, why? I don't need to make more coaches. I don't need more competition. This market is already saturated, to be perfectly honest. Like, what people pay for coaching is pretty low, quite honestly, in this scene. If we compared to what I could charge in martial arts for coaching, I can charge more per hour in martial arts and not drain the available inventory of what people want. I could charge more in tennis if I was good enough at tennis. I could charge more in wrestling. I could charge more in tutoring for academics. So, like, from a supply demand standpoint, we do not need a greater supply of Overwatch coaches paid. We might want a greater supply of free labor to continue to keep prices down, but I wouldn't really be interested in creating that. So, like, maybe you could say there's a need for coaches to be better, but you're going to say there's a need for free or really cheap coaches to be better. And I don't think there's a need for the paid coaches, the people who do this, like Whatabottle, Spilo, myself, Real, those sorts. I don't really think, or Stars Filth, I don't think there's a need for us to significantly change how we're doing this to make people better absorb stuff. We really are going with 2 to 3 points, not 36 points. We might hit people with, hey, until we figure out what you need to work on, we are going to talk about other things, because, the first 10 minutes of a review, we might still be figuring out what's most important for you, but then we're going to hone in, do repetition, that sort of thing, and we're going to finish out our session with those 2 to 3, maybe 4, but probably 2 to 3 things we want you to work on. And that is how all of the big names, at least the big names that get thought of on the Overwatch University subreddit, do their coaching. Like, we know this. In terms of could our content be shorter? Yes, it could, but it's sort of the candy versus vegetables thing. It's the TikTok versus history textbook type thing, where, yeah, some of those are easier to do and easier for you to digest. They're easier for you to pay attention to, just like watching your Overwatch is easier than watching a Stars Filth video, or is watching your Overwatch is easier than watching a temporal review, but guess what? One of them is a lot better for you than the other. Is there a sweet spot that could exist between those? Yes, but it's a lot more work for the coach to get that sweet spot right, because you do want shorter videos. You're not going to be able to get them to your Overwatch's level and still have accuracy unless you just do a lot less. You're putting a lot more time into them in that situation. And there's probably not enough of a market in the current Overwatch scene to justify it. There should be for Overwatch 2, but there's probably not right now. Could you invest that as time to get better so that you hit the ground running for Overwatch 2? Absolutely. And maybe people should. Oh, sure. Give me a sec to get mic ready. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, let's do it. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute the stream now because you're gonna be fantastic. How you doing?
Good idea. I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Yeah, not so bad, man. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the lengthy and completely comprehensive response you've given. There's I mentioned there's a lot to digest, and what I'm gathering from your response is it's really kind of gravitates around content creation on YouTube, like because I believe I
Yes.
guess kind of like the coaching kind of supports maybe I guess the revenue that comes from Patreon and the revenue that comes from YouTube ads and stuff like that. So that's I think where I'm from the very shallow from a very shallow gist of what I've read. It revolves around that. Um, and yeah, good points around the 2 to 3 things. I guess I should. This is a good list that you get like temporal wreath, water bottle, like those names
Sure.
that you mentioned. 2 to 3 things, fantastic. 33 things, yeah, 36 things, way too much, yeah. So I guess I haven't had too much luck coming into the coaching game. One thing I wanted to really throw out there is, at least from my experience or my studies, getting a sort of portfolio of progress
Uh-huh.
is really useful, especially in learning.
A
Now that portfolio
portfolio of
can be
progress. So tell me more about this. Go ahead.
yeah, sure. So I'm going to use an example from language lessons. There's a certain system called what do you call it? PBLA. It's Portfolio-Based Language Assessment. Basically, you have a rubric of the objectives that you're trying to work towards to get to the next language level. And these objectives are like, I don't know, if it's like, can I create an account in a bank? Very
Okay.
specific things, and then you derive. You can hear the little one behind. You can derive certain sub objectives from that. So if I have to create an account in a bank, I might have to learn how to ask open-ended questions.
Okay.
So parallel to that, in Overwatch, I'm really interested in these objective. Well, these 2 to 3 points that you have at the end of the video. These would be the things that you would tack onto your portfolio. This
Sure.
portfolio could be clips from a VOD, an example of why your positioning is bad. And I guess really what I'm getting at is well, and you also kind of answered it with your point about we have enough competition in Overwatch coaching as is. Why would I want to change the game, change the system? And that's a really good point. I think that's where my inexperience with the content creator life comes from. But a lot of my work or a lot of my questions are coming from these this idea of pedagogy and epistemology are these ways of kind of capturing or creating artifacts of one's progress or of one's capability so that they can refer to it. And I guess it would be part of these VOD reviews. But
Mm-hmm.
again, these raw VOD reviews are quite often too long. And, I mean, it's,
Sure.
it's useful for me to watch my own VOD review. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyways.
So I'd say, yeah, what you're looking at there is you've got your 2 to 3 things that walk out of it. And some people will want those, like, hey, can I have these written? The thing is, we really want to distill those 2 to 3 points down. And frequently, when I'm doing VOD reviews, for example, I'll get to the end of the VOD review. And if I have that person in chat with me, if I'm doing it just on stream, I have to do it because I don't have, they might be there in YouTube chat, but I can't wait for that because, again, we do have audience to deal with. But if I'm in there with voice with them, I actually tend to make the person I'm reviewing create their 2 to 3 points. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you
Yeah.
understand why I do that. It's because when they do it, it's much easier for them to retain it. It was in their words. And if they give me back too
100%.
many of my words, I make them explain the concepts to me because,
Yep.
okay, well, you said my words, but I don't know that you can't recall 6 sentences in terms of what you need to do better. You can recall maybe one sentence in terms of what you need to do better while you're, in the middle of a team fight, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
I think that is what you're getting at, where, hey, you should be walking out of a session with 2 to 3 things to work on. You should really be
Yep.
working on those things one thing at a time because we are terrible multitaskers. We're good at lying it to ourselves and telling
Yep.
ourselves we're good multitaskers, but we're terrible multitaskers. So it really is a work that thing into your autopilot. And once it's in your autopilot, work on the next thing. I think where it might break down a little bit is like, yes, I've worked on my positioning. I use cover better now. Or, yes,
Yep.
I've worked on my engagement timing, and my engagement timing is worked on, and I can check this box. My engagement timing is better. Cool.
Yep.
But what's the difference between a plat main tank and a masters main tank? Well, it's still engagement timing. But I thought I fixed my engagement timing. I thought I made
Let's
it
see.
better. Yeah, you
Aha.
did, but it's a scale. You see how that works? So it's like
Mhm,
I can't
mhm.
be like I need your engagement timing to be a 7 out of 10 because that doesn't mean anything to you, even if it does to me, and I can't make that mean anything to you. You see where I'm
Well,
going
this
with
is why
this?
rubrics exist. Yeah.
Yeah,
So and this is really the purpose of a rubric. Sorry about that.
it's fine.
Uh, yeah. So this is why rubrics exist. A rubric is basically a scale, like maybe 1 to 5 or one. You know, it could be bronze to grandmasters,
Mhm.
and this would be the benefit of having a portfolio for a for a player.
Mhm.
Now, one so you mentioned something about having a coach on retainer. You don't have the time to take somebody over a long period of time, but I mean, I guess I kind of understand how something like Patreon works. If you're subscribing to someone or
Sure.
giving them a monthly subscription, there could be room for that. Like you're paying for somebody. It would be kind of interesting to see if learners or players would kind of expect that sort of,
Sure.
well, if
You,
you're right.
you could absolutely do, and one of my chat people suggested that. Can we do like a mini retainer thing on Patreon? They're pushing me to set up my Patreon. That's really what they're doing there. But
Ah,
but what's going on there is you could absolutely do something like that. The problem you run into is most people on YouTube, like, yes, if your ultimate goal is I want to do Overwatch coaching and that's what I'm going to do forever and that's the thing, that's potentially okay. But ultimately, are you going to make more money as a successful Overwatch coach or as your Overwatch? Are you familiar with the YouTube channel Your Overwatch?
yeah, yeah, I do. They do a lot of talk over, more like conceptual videos, not as much breakdown like you do.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
But my point is they have, I don't know, like 800,000 subscribers or something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the reality is when you get to 1 million subscribers, you make so much money in the YouTube world that do you want to have people paying you $100 a month, $200 a month, 50
Mm,
bucks a
mm,
month,
mm,
20
mm,
bucks
mm,
a
mm,
month
mm,
to be
mm,
on
mm.
retainer when your time only splits so many ways? Or are you going to do more good and making people better if you can get
Yep, yep.
500,000 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers, 1 million subscribers? Like there's a little bit of a balance because a lot of that retainer work, you're not really going to be able to share out well. So like it's an
Yeah,
equation from a business standpoint.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point. Having a bunch of, like, let's say you have 1,000 people who are, you're on retainer for them, and they each have like something very different to to work on. It's definitely, you're not really gonna get a lot of spaghetti to stick on the
Well,
wall.
not only that is it, hey, we have a bunch of different things for them to work on, but how did you get 1,000 different people on retainer in the first place? Well, you built a model, you built a system that had some scalability to it. Like, I'm a contenders coach. That's pretty high in the Overwatch scene, but the problem you run
Right.
into is that still doesn't mean that 1 million people know my name. You see the problem here where it's like, okay, this is
Yeah.
how do you get your client base? Well, you had to build a machine using YouTube algorithms, using Twitter, using subreddits to get discovered. And if you were able to do that, you probably have a model. Like I could now convert hard over to, hey, I'm going to do this retainer model, or other people could. It doesn't have to be me. It could be other people going this
Yeah.
route because we all do find different routes through here. And someone could capture that niche and go, no, this absolutely is the niche, and word of mouth will be so good from this retainer model that it's worth it. It could be, but I don't think that there's strong support for that. I could totally
Yeah.
be wrong.
Yeah, I what I'm so the big question that's coming to my mind now is, there's a lot, so I would assume there's a lot more people in gold and platinum than there are in masters. And
Yes.
yeah, the reason why someone would do something like approach this, I guess this concept or this model that I guess we're kind of getting at, would be someone who's, I guess, not really in it for the content creation so much, but more for the actual collective equitable betterments of players in Overwatch.
Yeah,
It would
but
be
the
more. It would. Mm,
problem that you run into there, I'm going to cut you off because I get where you're
yeah.
going, sorry, is if I'm really like, I want to experience the highest level Overwatch and I want to make like the most sort of like, I want to
Mm,
make people different, I'm going to go work with pros. Because like, I,
yeah.
I have that option, but like, so does everyone else. And if you're like, no, I want to have the most nuanced Overwatch work, it's not with golds, it's not with silvers, it's not with platinum, it's with, well, not everyone can work with, I can go get a job with a contenders team if I wanted to. I could force my way into Owl. Not everyone can do that, but everyone almost everyone, a large percentage of coaches, if they really wanted to work on their craft and were just having fun coaching and weren't interested in the compensation aspect of it, they're going to work their way up to tier 3, so over GM level coaching, and they're going to be coaching a 4.2 team, a 4.3 team, a 4.4 team, that sort of thing, and that's going to be more interesting to them than coaching golds. You follow what I'm
I
saying?
see it. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very interesting thing. I'm gonna equate this to so let's say that in language teaching you have I'm gonna say from my I teach a Canadian language benchmarks and there's 1 to
Hmm.
12. You typically only teach 1 to 8. And I've definitely felt that teaching like level 1, level 2 is not really as interesting. There's a lot more repetition in those
Uh,
classes than there are for level 7 to 8, which is, like you mentioned, things are a bit more nuanced.
and you can
Um,
totally see the same thing at colleges where it's really easy to get professors to potentially teach your grad students to do their own research. It's really hard to go,
yeah.
hey, go teach our 101 class for this. Make the new adjunct do it. I won't. That sort of thing. Like that's just
Yeah.
how it works.
That's how it'd be. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I'm getting a clearer picture of what it actually means to well, just think about I'm I'm falling on if you are it's more I think would be on on the onus of the learner or of the coachee, if you will, of the player to be a bit more well, I guess selective or be more sure because learning how to learn is actually one of the
Oh, it's
I
huge.
mean, novices, I'm gonna call us novices, myself novice.
Sure.
Novices learn differently from an expert, and the problem of being coached sometimes by freelancers or people who are not really aware of this sort of thing is often someone will teach a novice like an expert, but novices don't teach like an expert.
No,
So
not at all.
what do I need? What do I need as a novice? There's 20 to 30 odd people characters in Overwatch. I'm probably like on average silver at all of
Hmm.
them on average. So what I want to get out of it out of learning Overwatch is not necessarily to climb to masters. Personally, it would be just be I don't know to get to plat, diamond, lowest. Just to be as good as I can be.
Sure.
So my motivations, my intrinsic value, motivation would be different from what I guess coaches offer over the a general spectrum. Um,
Reframe that for me because I'm not sure I
yeah.
follow.
So my motivation of getting better at Overwatch isn't the typical to climb to see the number go bigger. It's really to learn how the game works.
Sure.
And that would mean not just like focusing on a role like a tank or main tank or just a specific character,
Hmm.
but it would kind of just mean how all these parts
Sure. So you want the macro
move.
stuff. And the irony of what you're looking for is what you're looking
Well,
for is not what's going to make you the most better at the
no, it's
game.
so
Go ahead.
yeah. So through my macro will get better. Through my individual understanding of how I can influence the game
Hmm.
will help the macro. Like and what I'm interested in is and how the macro works at a gold level will be different from how the macro works at platinum level. Like how because ladder is chaotic, and I'm
Sure.
speaking mostly from the context of solo queue on ladder.
Okay.
How my ladder in one game will be different from a ladder the next game in ladder, and but to understand, all right, very briefly, okay, what is this team comp? All these words that we throw around,
Hmm.
that stuff's fun to me. And I don't know if and maybe I should reach out to the coaches that you mentioned on the subreddit post. But I for what I would need, and I'm not sure, and this is would be interesting to see what people really think that they need or what they really need, players my level. Um, yeah, what I would really want, I don't know. Well, it probably so would be, I guess, is offered or nuanced, or it's too nuanced for coaches. What coaches offer.
Well, it depends. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like what you described. Sorry, I've got a lawnmower going. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but
can hear it.
you do hear it. I'm sorry about that.
No, cannot.
Oh, good, good, excellent. So what I would say there is like it sounds like what you're looking for is like you're looking for how does the game work at a macro level that's interesting to you and like understanding macro does lead to better micro and something like engagement
Oh,
timing,
really?
something about angles can absolutely. I mean, understanding
I thought
engagement
micro turned
timing
into
and
macro.
angles understanding something
'Cause-
like engagement timing and angles is going to be a macro concept, and if you do those
Yeah.
things well you're going to win the fights effectively. Like if your McCree aim is worse than the other McCree aim but you're able to shoot at McCree from the side when he's looking at your Reinhardt, well, you're probably going to beat him in some duels there, right? Like they're not
You
actually
probably
duels. Go ahead.
You've probably mentioned this like 1,000 times on your screen. I just want to
Mhm.
make sure that I'm understanding micro versus macro.
Sure.
Micro is my individual, I guess, influence on the game. Macro would be how 6 different individuals influence the game. Am I correct in that very
Yeah, that's
short?
fair. That's fair. Macro is
Yeah,
effectively going to be your from above team play elements, your hey,
yeah,
how does the team work, the synergy, the timing, that sort of thing. Your micro would generally be thought of. You could think of it as you individually. Some people would think of it specifically as mechanics, that sort of thing.
yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, cool. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem. So, like, if you're hitting better macro, macro ultimately does trump micro in a lot of situations. If you can make it, if you make
Yeah,
it Overwatch at its
team
simplest
game.
form, a game about angles and timing, you're going to do well. And if you do angles and timing better than the other team, if you sync to your team's timing better, if you take different angles than your team, but you don't get crushed on them, you're generally going to win. And those are some of the most important things you can do. That said, if
Yeah,
the other team understands it equally, well, okay, who understands the flashbang interaction of which flashbang do you want to go out first versus, okay, if you flashbang first, get stunned first, or you want your flashbang to hit
mm,
them second because you both flashbang and they're stunned through it, that sort of thing, and they can't hit their
yeah,
follow up cycle. Like that, then we're getting into micro and that sort of thing.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, whatever. But that only matters if we're getting the macro right in the first place, or
Right.
if our micro is so bad that we can't hit the broadside of a
Oh.
barn. Like if we go, aha, I hit my angle
Yeah, I got
timing,
you.
but I still just can't take advantage of the 3 seconds that you're staring at my Orisa
Yeah.
because she dropped a fresh shield and I'm coming over a roof as Farah and
But
I can't hit a rocket during those 3 seconds. Okay, well, yes, we're gonna have some
but
trouble. Go
and
ahead.
that is a cognitive process there that is definitely present in higher level play and is I can assure you, I mean, it might be a fluke if you kind of follow that, that synapses path at a lower level. But it's kind of cool how you mentioned, okay, micro feeds into macro, which feeds into micro. Like it's definitely a symbiotic relationship there. And I was talking about this to another coach the other day about cognitive overload, how these are so many things to be thinking about at higher level. Like you'll have to process a higher level play, but without that foundation of your micro mechanics from that you'll develop from low level play, I will never get the chance to think about that flashbang micro macro mechanics.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure, exactly. You've sort of got to
cool.
get the macro to work well enough. I mean, let me rephrase that. Like, obviously, there's multiple ways up. You can just be, mechanically better than everyone, and that will take you to a certain level. You can
Yeah,
macroly understand the game much better than your team does, but actually be able to implement that because that's also the difference. Like, people will go, "Oh, I need the coach with the highest SR," and it's like, no, you don't. You don't even need to know what your coach's SR is because your coach hasn't necessarily trained those habits for those timings. The coach may understand the macro or the micro or whatever. He may
yeah,
understand it, but that doesn't mean that he's actually trained the reaction himself to go, okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
as my ball hits this pile drive, I just automatically open this angle to throw this TNT in here, for example. Like they
Right.
just might not
Yeah,
have trained that because the game is complicated, or ultimately it's a bunch of micro habits that you're stacking on top of each other.
yeah, yeah. That's why every game is different.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Uh,
is fascinating stuff, man. Listen, I appreciate you so much for having me on. Like,
hey, no
I'm
problem.
gonna, yeah, yeah, no, it's a lot to digest. I mean, from a pedagogic, from epistemological perspective, from thinking about what the individual needs versus how the coach gives it to it. There's a lot to, well, I guess there's a lot of interest on my part, and good thoughts on how you probably won't see any systematic change right now because be all end all, coach is going to gravitate towards higher level play.
Yep.
And I guess my next job will be to kind of figure out, all right, what do people around me need or feel that's missing from their enjoyment of, if anything is missing at all from their
Sure.
growth or
Sure.
coaching
And
sessions.
it sort of does come down to is the content available? Is the coaching available if people want to get better at the game? It is. Could it be made better and more streamlined? Yes, it could. But can it be
Mm,
made 200% better or can it be made 30% better? That's the real question. I think there's room to make it 20 to
yeah,
30% better. I don't think
yeah,
there's room to go, this 1 hour VOD review should be 8 minutes. Well, I
no,
can do that, but like that, you see,
yeah,
the market won't bear that. And we do have
yeah,
market
yeah.
forces to deal with here. If people want to eat candy, okay, well, that's not going to, you get where I'm going here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The idea. Cool, man. All right, appreciate that. Thank you, and thanks to all the people on YouTube for
Of
for being
course,
with
of
me on this.
course.
Yeah.
I'm glad people pinged me and that you wrote this up because it gave me some
Yeah.
interesting piece to go through here.
Well,
Thanks,
man.
man.
And I'll keep on doing it next time.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon,
All
man.
right. Peace out, bud. Thanks.
Peace.
Bye bye.
Okay, I don't have a ton of time, but let me do a little more catch up on chat because I know I potentially said something about micro versus macro there that maybe I misspoke or maybe was controversial because I see you guys are exploding about that. Let me get in here real quick. I would say my general stance would be macro is more important than micro. Obviously, the macro, if you get your macro well, it's not so much that that makes your micro better, though it can in some ways because there's less pressure on you to hit that shot. If you lined up your timing well, it doesn't feel as hard, it doesn't feel as bad. Like, oh, the soldier's not looking at me. It's easier to hit my fair rocket because I got my timing right than it is when the soldier is pre-staring at me. But no, I would say like there's that little aspect of your micro makes your macro better. I wouldn't necessarily say that like your macro automatically truly makes you more mechanically skilled, but it's easier to improve than micro from a concept standpoint. It's easier to improve at micro than macro from a practice standpoint. There's things on both of those, at least with aim. Movement can be a little harder. You have to focus on it a little bit more. How much is 5K subs worth to Temporal? Decent money, even in the gaming space. The gaming space isn't great on compensation for ad money, but it's worth something. Moving back to this, though, Kessel says, I usually consider micro as steaming from macro, where micro is the individual application of the macro team-wide concepts. I think that's a fair way to put it. Yeah. D.Va has micro missiles. Should Baby D.Va get macro missiles? Oh, I like it. I like it. Kessel says, so at that point, you might as well just start with the macro. Yes, macro is generally the right place to start unless people are actually struggling with mouse control. The problem you run into is you don't want to just get people better at the macro forever because you do want people at some point pretty early in their playtime career to start working on their micro, especially if they have really bad micro in terms of mouse control movement, because it's hard to fix movement habits because they get ingrained pretty hard. And also, aim is something that will get better over time as long as people are doing it somewhat right and actively trying on it some, but you can't really rush someone going, okay, it's been a month and your aim was bottom 20% and now your aim is top 80%. Like, that's really hard to do in a month, even if you specifically try to work on it with aim trainers, things like that. It's really a lot easier to go up over time with your mechanical skill. So you do want people pretty early to start putting some effort into it to make sure that they are at a sensitivity that works for them, to make sure that they're actually trying to aim and not just spray and praying, that sort of thing. Coach Thumper, hey Thumper, talked to you yesterday. The question should not be whether to teach macro or micro. The question should be to teach game sense, mechanics, and positioning in a pedagogical way that allows the player to understand both the macro of the team and enemy team while seeing how their micro decisions can impact the game. So you're coming a little bit from a team coaching background, at least I believe you are. And yes, I would say that's absolutely, or that's mostly true in a team standpoint. Not whether to teach macro or micro. Should be teach game sense, mechanics, and positioning. Game sense, mechanics, and positioning. I mean, the thing is, if you're teaching game sense, mechanics, and positioning, I think most of us would say you're teaching some macro and some micro if you're teaching all three of those things. That allows the way to understand both the macro of the team and the enemy team while seeing how their micro decision making can impact the game. Sure, that's a fair way to put it. That was pleasant. It was. I thought so too, Starsfield. Then Toby, who was the writer of this, says, and who we just had on, says, thanks so much for having me. The mother of my children is looking at me expectantly, as she should. This fed into bath time, so gotta go. Later, man. Have fun. Have fun. So later we need a min SR? Is that too boring to review? I don't think so. You won't teach true macro until very high levels as well. If you're framing macro how you are, yes, that would be true. Unless you're working with an organized team. You can teach a silver team, if you want, how to macro pretty well. You can teach a silver team how to run a Reaper Mei brawl comp, so a true brawl comp, against poke comps in silver if they actually play Reaper Mei, Reinhardt, D.Va, and say Lucio and Moira. If they actually play these heroes, you can teach a silver team And they can do it, and they can beat pharmacy teams. Like, this is something that you can do, but it's definitely macro that is allowing them to beat a pharmacy team. And I've taught very low-level teams how to do this, and then they've gone and executed in matches, in, scrims, in real tournaments, that sort of thing, on ladder, because the queue is 6 stacks on ladder at that level. And that's doable, and that is macro. So, like, it's not totally that, oh, it has to be at a super high level, though I get where you're coming from. No less than 500 SRs wouldn't make awesome reviews. Plus, I think that market's sort of already been grabbed by, laughing review type things of those things. We have a certain content creator who's gone hard in that world. You never know what's going to happen. Thank you so much for addressing this. No problem, Charles. Kessel says, also, I have a video I'll probably be releasing on Monday or so So, would you be all right if I tag you along with some others for comments and thoughts? Of course, of course. I can't guarantee that I'll be on it like the hour it's out, but absolutely, feel free to tag me. You do certainly good enough and interesting enough work that I'm willing to take a look. Okay, we're going to wrap up there because I have a warm-up session to go do before Collegiate. I'll probably stream this match. This will be Northeastern versus Redbirds. Redbirds are both the best team in Collegiate and the best team in North American Contenders, so that'll be a tough one. I'll just leave it at that. I may not stream it. I may just record it or stream it and then list it for streaming, so actually make it public tomorrow after they've played their other match, because it will have the same opening map, and I don't necessarily want to show that 24 hours before the other match. So maybe that won't go up on stream, but that will go up tomorrow or Sunday if it doesn't today. Okay, that's going to do it. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't. If you are looking to get coaching yourself from a qualified coach, you can join my Discord in the description below. See what rates look like, see what sort of promos, events, things like that we have going on. We have our Overwatch educational league type stuff where we do some internal scrims or we do some 6 stacking, play together with comms, that sort of thing. You can start thinking about some of that macro even in a silver, a plat type game, that sort of thing, if you'd like to. Yeah. Glad you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.